Deep space was quiet, too quiet. The dying star at the center of the system flickered like a candle in its final moments, its light weak and trembling. Around it, the remains of once proud alien fleets floated silently. Battleships were cracked open like eggshells. Escape pods drifted cold. Engines no longer glowed. Everything felt abandoned, as if the entire system was taking its last breath. For hours, emergency messages had echoed across the void. Help us. Is anyone receiving? Please respond. Our forces are destroyed. But no answer came. Only one armada still survived in this broken sky, the Varksha Union Defense Fleet. And even they were barely holding on. On the bridge of the flagship Valtor, Commander Arvel stood surrounded by smoke, sparks, and exhausted crew members. His scales were darkened from battle burns, and his voice was heavy with fear. "How many ships remain?" Arvel asked quietly. A trembling officer replied, "Only 6, Commander, out of 300. Arvel closed his eyes. 300 ships destroyed, 300 hopes extinguished, and all because of one enemy, the null wraiths, creatures made of void and hunger, beings that fed on light, energy, and matter. Their ships looked like moving shadows with glowing cores, and wherever they passed, stars dimmed and planets died." Arvel stared at the tactical display. A swarm of null wraith ships slowly advanced, twisting like a black storm across the battlefield. "They are consuming the radiation from our fallen ships," said another officer, voice shaking. "They grow stronger with every kill." Arvel felt a deep hopelessness settle over the room. "We cannot outrun them. We cannot hide from them. And our weapons," he looked at the weapons officer, "our weapons barely scratch them," she whispered. A long silence followed. Arvel finally spoke. "Send the SOS again. Use all channels." "We already did, Commander. No one is close enough." "Send it anyway," Arvel snapped. Someone must hear it, someone. But even he knew the truth. The closest ally empire was weeks away. The Varksha were alone. The officer pressed the control panel, broadcasting the desperate message across the galaxy. "This is the Varksha Union. We are under attack by the null wraiths. We request immediate assistance. Anyone, please respond." The moment the message echoed into space, the bridge lights flickered. The dying star dimmed even more. The null wraiths were feeding again. Arvel gripped the edge of the holodeck. "Prepare final defense. If this is our last day, we make it a day the wraiths remember." But before his officers could respond, a sensor console beeped loudly. "Commander," shouted the sensor officer, "something is happening." Everyone turned. "What is it?" Arvel asked. The officer's eyes widened. "An object is entering the system, but the signature is unknown." Arvel stiffened. "Unknown?" That meant not Varksha, not ally empires, not null wraiths, something else. "Show it," Arvel ordered. The hologram flickered. Space twisted like a giant ripple spreading across water. Light bent inward. Matter warped. Something enormous was dropping out of FTL. The crew held their breath. "Is it a new enemy?" whispered one officer. "Another threat?" asked another. Arvel stared at the growing shape. It was huge, bigger than any ship they had ever seen. Sharp lines, heavy armor, thrusters glowing blue-white like miniature suns. The ship completed its jump and appeared fully. The bridge fell completely silent. Arvel took a step back. "No," he whispered. It cannot be." But the hull markings were clear. The shape was unmistakable. It was a Terran ship, a human warship. The myths were true. The legends passed down for centuries were real. Arvel breathed. "Humans are real?" Before anyone could react, space shook again. 1, 2, 10, 20. More massive ships jumped in behind the first one. Battle cruisers, destroyers, carriers, dreadnoughts, a full Terran Battle Fleet. The Varksha looked at each other in pure disbelief. "But humans vanished from the galaxy generations ago," one officer said. "They were only stories." Another whispered. "My grandmother said humans lived on a death world," muttered a third. "A world too dangerous for any life except them." Arvel's voice trembled. "If they survive that, perhaps they truly are as strong as the legends say." But before hope could grow, the null wraiths reacted. The Shadow Fleet changed direction instantly. Their glowing cores flickered with hunger. They turned away from the ruined Varksha ships and rushed toward the new arrivals. The wraiths wanted fresh energy, new prey, a new feast. Arvel's heart sank. They will destroy the humans, an officer whispered. No one survives the wraiths. Another said, we must warn them. Do it, Arvel ordered. But even as the message transmitted, the Terran ships began to move. Their formation shifted in perfect unison. Their engines glowed brighter, their weapons activated with a deep, thunder-like hum. The Terran fleet was not afraid. They were preparing to attack. Arvel felt chills race down his spine. By the stars, humans are not running. He stared at the screen as the massive Terran flagship turned toward the enemy. They are going to fight the wraiths, he whispered. The Vark Shah prepared to witness humanity die. Humanity prepared to erase the enemy. The battlefield was still burning when the Terran fleet arrived. The broken ships of the Vark Shah drifted in silence, their destroyed hulls reflecting the strange purple light of the dying star. But now a new light filled the system, a cold, steady blue glow from Terran engines. Commander Arvel stood frozen on the bridge of the Veiltor as the giant human flagship slowly turned toward them. Its armor looked old yet impossibly strong, scarred yet unbroken. Every plate of metal seemed designed for war. Commander, whispered the sensor officer, we are receiving a transmission from the Terran flagship. Arvel swallowed hard. Put it on screen. The hologram flickered to life. A human woman appeared, calm, steady, and completely fearless. Her uniform was dark blue with silver markings, and her eyes were sharp like someone who had seen 1,000 battles but worried about none. Terran Star Fleet, flagship TSF Titanus, Captain Rhea Morgan speaking, she said. Her voice carried no fear, only purpose. Arvel bowed his head instinctively. I am Commander Arvel of the Vark Shah Union. Captain, we are honored. Captain Morgan raised a hand. Stand by, Commander. Terran Fleet will engage. Engage? Engage what? Arvel's voice trembled. Captain Morgan, you must listen. The enemy you see, those are the Null Wraiths. They destroy entire suns. They cannot be fought. Morgan didn't blink. Watch us. The transmission ended. The Vark Shah crew stared at each other, unable to process what they just heard. She thinks they can fight the Wraiths, whispered one officer. Another shook his head. No one can fight the Wraiths. They eat energy itself, but the humans did not seem concerned. In fact, they moved with perfect precision, as if this was just another day in the office. The Vark Shah watched in awe as the Terran fleet shifted positions. One by one, dozens of Terran warships took their places around the Titanus. Destroyers moved into the front line. Carriers released swarms of drones. Cruisers took flanking positions. Heavy battleships powered up their massive cannons. It looked like a metal wall. Forming in the stars, Commander, said the weapons officer softly. Their formation, it is flawless. Arvel nodded slowly. Humans, they fight like a single creature. United, a loud hum shook the battlefield. Terran ships began charging their weapons. The glow grew brighter, brighter, brighter. The Vark Shah officers shielded their eyes. What kind of power is that? One asked. Arvel whispered. Power from a death world. It was the only explanation. The stories said humans came from a planet where storms could tear mountains apart, and animals hunted creatures 10 times their size. A planet where the strong survived and the weak died quickly. A world that shaped warriors, a world that shaped monsters. But here, humans were not monsters. They were protectors. The Null Wraiths, sensing new energy, changed direction. Their shadow ships twisted like living serpents, moving together in one dark wave. They're going for the humans, the sensor officer said. Arvel felt sick. Humans, retreat. Please retreat. But no retreat order came. Instead, Terran comms opened for one last broadcast. Terran Fleet to all vessels, Captain Morgan said, voice steady as steel. Begin Operation Dawn Shield. The Vark Shah did not know what that meant, but they would learn. Terran engines burned brighter. Gun ports opened. Cannons extended. Hundreds of drones armed themselves. It was a sight the Vark Shah would never forget. The Wraiths charged at the humans like a dark ocean swallowing light. Their glowing cores burned with hunger. Arvel said quietly, this is the end, for all of us. But then, the Titanus fired. One single beam of pure white energy burst from its forward cannons. The beam ripped through space, tearing through 3 Wraith ships instantly. They exploded in bright flashes like shattered stars. The Varksha gasped. What weapon is that? The weapons officer cried. Arvel's eyes widened. A human weapon. The wraiths stalled, confused. They had never been hurt like this. Terran destroyers fired next. Blue plasma arcs cut across space, slicing through shadow hulls. Terran drones moved like a metal swarm, weaving between enemy ships, firing in perfect sync. One by one, the wraiths vanished into dust. The Varksha had believed humans were myths, old stories, voices from a forgotten age. But here were the Deathworlders in their true form, unshaken, unbroken, unstoppable. Captain Morgan appeared again on the Valtor's screen. "Commander Arvel," she said calmly, as if she hadn't just destroyed half the enemy fleet. "Fall back behind Terran lines. We will handle the rest." Arvel could barely speak. "Captain, how are you doing this?" Morgan looked off screen, watching her fleet tear through the wraiths. Then she answered, "Simple. We were born on a world that tried to kill us every day." She looked back at Arvel, compared to Earth. "Your wraiths are nothing." The line sent shivers through every Varksha on the bridge. Humans were not fighting to survive. Humans were comfortable. This was nothing to them. For the first time in hours, the Varksha felt hope, real hope. Their scanners showed something impossible. The wraiths, creatures that had destroyed entire star systems, were dying. Dozens gone, hundreds falling, thousands breaking apart under Terran fire. Arvel whispered, "Humans, they are wiping out the enemy in seconds." No one answered. No one needed to. Every officer on the bridge knew they were witnessing history, the moment when myths became real, the moment when hope returned to the galaxy, the moment when humanity showed why they were feared. The battlefield changed the moment the Terran fleet opened fire. 1 second, the null wraiths were advancing like a rolling storm of darkness. The neigh. XT, the sky exploded with white and blue light. Commander Arvel and his crew stared from the bridge of the Valtor, unable to speak. They had fought the wraiths for days and never slowed them down, not even once. But now, humanity was doing the impossible. The first Terran attack came from the destroyers on the front line. Their weapons, long, glowing cannons, fired bright beams that ripped through space like lightning splitting the heavens. Nova Lances firing, reported a human officer calmly over open comms. The beams hit the wraith ships, and something shocking happened. The wraiths dissolved, not exploded, not cracked. They simply evaporated into thin air like shadows hit by sunlight. The Varksha bridge fell silent. What weapon does that?" An officer whispered in awe. Arvel said softly, "Human weapons." He didn't know how they worked. He didn't need to know. All that mattered was that they worked. The null wraiths reacted quickly. The Shadow Fleet changed formation, splitting into multiple tendrils that curled around the Terran ships, trying to surround them. Their glowing cores pulsed with anger. They had never been resisted before, not like this. Arvel watched as hundreds of wraith ships surged forward like black fire. "They're trying to engulf the humans," he said. "Then the humans are doomed," another officer said shakily. But Arvel wasn't so sure. Not anymore. Without warning, the Titanus opened its side bays. Thousands, no, tens of thousands, of small metal drones shot out into space. They formed a shimmering silver cloud that moved with eerie intelligence. The Varksha stared at their screens. "They're alive?" a crew member whispered. Arvel corrected softly, "No, better. They are human-made." The drones spread across the battlefield like a silver storm. Each one fired small but deadly plasma bolts. They tore through the wraith shadows WI. Impossible precision. Wraith tendrils collapsed instantly under the drone swarm. Arvel felt chills. The Varksha fleet had thrown everything they had at the wraiths. Missiles, cannons, plasma torpedoes, and nothing worked. Yet humans had used just their drones, and it was already enough to shred enemy wings. The Varksha now understood something new. Humans didn't bring weapons to war. Humans brought solutions. Behind the drone cloud, Terran cruisers moved smoothly into the second line. Their weapons glowed with a heat so intense it burned through every sensor. Streams of plasma, forged inside miniature suns hidden inside the ships, launched outward in perfect waves. The wraiths tried to dodge, twisting like serpents, but humanity had predicted their movement. Every shot hit, every shot mattered, and every shot killed. The Varksha had fought the wraiths for days. Humanity destroyed half the fleet in less than 5 minutes. On the bridge of the TSF Titanus, Captain Rhea Morgan watched the battle unfold with cold focus. Her officers moved around her in perfect rhythm, calling out data and status reports. Nova Lances recharging, drone cloud at 87% integrity, solar absorption batteries at 61%, Wraith reinforcements approaching from Vector 7. Captain Morgan nodded. Her expression never changed. This was normal for her, another battlefield, another threat to eliminate. The Varksha had thought humans would panic, but the humans looked relaxed. Arvel saw this through the open comm feed and whispered, "They are not fighting with fear. They are fighting with experience." Suddenly, the Titanus shifted position. Giant panels folded open along its sides like wings. The Varksha gasped as golden light began to gather inside the ship's core. "What are they doing now?" one officer cried. Arvel stared, stunned. "They're absorbing the star's energy." The Titanus was pulling raw power directly from the dying star itself, something no Varksha technology could survive, much less control. A Terran engineer's voice echoed across the comm. "Solar spear charging, 10%, 18%, 33%. Arvel grabbed the railing. "What is a solar spear?" It sounded ancient, legendary, terrifying. Sensing danger, the null race regrouped. Their cores glowed brighter than before. They formed a massive wall of shadow and surged toward the Titanus in one last desperate attack. "They're going to overwhelm the humans!" a Varksha officer yelled. But humans did not flinch. Captain Morgan simply said, "Maintain position." The Terran fleet did not move backward, did not scatter, did not weaken. They held the line, and the solar spear continued to charge. The Titanus's golden light became blinding. Even the Varksha had to shield their eyes. Solar spear at 90%, the engineer called 95%, 99%, ready to fire. Captain Morgan stood tall. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. Fire. A beam of pure starlight burst from the Titanus. It was not a laser. It was not plasma. It was not energy humans had created. It was the power of a star, focused into one perfect spear of destruction. The beam tore through the Wraith fleet like a knife through mist. Thousands of Wraith ships evaporated instantly. Their glowing cores went dark. Their shadow bodies vanished. The entire battlefield turned white. When the light faded, nothing remained. No wraiths, no shadows, no threat, only silence. After several minutes, Commander Arvel finally spoke. "Humans do not survive war," he swallowed. "Humans end war." His officers nodded slowly. Some cried, some laughed in disbelief. But all of them knew one thing: the galaxy had feared the Deathworlders for centuries. Now they understood why. The battlefield was quiet for only a moment. The light of the solar spear faded slowly, leaving behind drifting dust where thousands of null Wraith ships had been. The Terran fleet stood in perfect formation, glowing softly as they cooled their weapons. Commander Arvel stared at his tactical screen inside the Veil Tor. His hands trembled, not from fear but from disbelief. We are winning," he whispered. His officers nodded shakily. No one had ever seen the Wraiths fall so fast. No one had believed it was possible. But just as hope began to return, every alarm on the bridge screamed at once. Red lights flashed. Sensors overloaded. Space itself seemed to twist. "Commander!" shouted the sensor officer. "Something massive is forming." "What do you mean, forming?" "Forming what?" Arvel demanded. The officer swallowed hard. "The remaining Wraith ships, the survivors, they are merging." Arvel felt his stomach drop. Merging? Into what? The answer appeared on the screen before the officer could speak. The drifting shadows of the remaining Wraith ships twisted inward like liquid darkness, pulling themselves together. Glowing cores fused, stretching into tendrils, branching into limbs. The creature grew and grew, expanding until it was larger than a moon, bigger than any ship the Varksha or Terrans had ever seen. "A living weapon, a Wraith colossus. Stars save us," whispered an officer. "It's alive." Arvel stepped back from the screen. The creature's shape wriggled and twisted like a nightmare made real. Its millions of eyes, glowing blue like cold fire, focused on the Terran flagship, the Titanus. "It sees the humans," Arvel said softly. "It wants to destroy them first." The creature opened a giant maw of spinning energy, preparing to fire. The Varksha crew were terrified. That thing is too big. No weapon can kill something like that. We must run now. But on the Terran fleet, there was no panic, no fea. No shouting, just calm voices giving calm orders. A Terran officer reported, Titana shields at 83%, all systems stable. Another replied, AI suite prepared for synchronization. And on the bridge of the Titanus, Captain Rhea Morgan stood perfectly still, watching the creature as if studying a puzzle, not a monster that could swallow planets. Arvel felt shivers. Humans were not fearless. Humans were beyond fear. A spherical drone rose from the Titanus's hull. It flew toward the monster in a blur of blue light. The Varksha watched it closely. "What is that?" an officer asked. Arvel frowned. "I believe it is an AI probe." The drone scanned the creature with thin beams of golden energy. The scan readings flowed into the Terran systems. Seconds later, a human voice echoed over open comms. "Scan complete. Structural data mapped. Weak points located." The Varksha gasped. Humans had scanned a creature bigger than a moon in seconds, Arvel whispered. "They are preparing something powerful." Captain Morgan's voice echoed across the fleets. Terran Fleet. Protocol Helios. Full synchronization. The Varksha officers blinked in confusion. Protocol, what? What is Helios? Another human weapon. They didn't have to wait long to find out. The Terran ships began to glow. First the Titanus, then the destroyers, then every cruiser, carrier, and battleship. Blue lines of energy spread across their hulls like veins of living light. Engines hummed in unison. Weapons aligned perfectly. Every Terran ship pointed toward the monstrous wraith. The Varksha tactical screen displayed something incredible. The Terran ships were linking together. A firing network. One mind, one weapon, one strike. Arvel's voice shook with awe. They are turning their entire fleet into a single cannon. His officers stared in silence. Humans were not fighting with ships. Who? Mans were fighting with unity. The Wraith Colossus opened its enormous maw. A swirling blue beam began to gather, far larger than the weapon that nearly destroyed the Titanus before. "It's going to fire," cried a Varksha officer. Arvel's heart pounded. Humans can't survive that. They must move. But the humans did not move. Captain Morgan simply said, "Hold position." Her crew obeyed instantly. No hesitation, no fear. The monster fired. A beam of blue energy, wide as a mountain, long as a continent, shot toward the Titanus. The Varksha screamed, "The humans are dead." But something incredible happened. The humans fired first. For the first time, Captain Rhea Morgan raised her voice. "Fire all weapons." And the entire Terran fleet obeyed. Thousands of cannons, millions of drones, solar spear energy, Nova lances, mass drivers, plasma arcs, railgun slugs, starcore beams. Everything fired at once. It wasn't a battle. It wasn't even a fight. It was the wrath of humanity unleashed as a single perfect strike. Light washed over the battlefield, white, blue, gold, a wave of energy so intense that even the dying star brightened. The Wraith's beam collided with the Terran blast, and the Wraith's attack shattered instantly. The Terran strike hit the creature's core. For a moment, the giant entity froze, its form flickering like a dying flame. Then it broke apart, in silence, like dust blown away by wind. The giant Wraith was gone. The darkness vanished. Space cleared. The Varksha bridge was completely quiet. Arvel could barely speak. "They killed it," he whispered. "They killed a creature the size of a moon." One officer laughed and cried at the same time. Humans erased the enemy in seconds." Another whispered, "We are witnessing gods." Arvel shook his head. "No, not gods." He looked at the Titanus on the screen, glowing, strong, calm, death woe. The battlefield was silent. For the first time since the war began, Tavris -9 sky held no shadows, no glowing wraith cores, no storms of darkness. The gigantic wraith creature, the one that had formed from thousands of smaller ships, was gone, completely gone. Not even dust remained. Only the Terran fleet floated in the calm void, their armor glowing softly like a line of guardian stars. Inside the Veil Tor, Commander Arvel and his crew were frozen. No one knew what to say. They had watched humans destroy something that, by all logic, should have been unstoppable. One officer finally whispered, voice trembling, Is it over?" Arvel looked at the sensors. There were no enemy signals, no life readings, no energy signatures. The wraiths were dead. "It is over," he replied softly, "thanks to the humans," but even he could hardly believe the words. Outside the windows of the Veil Tor, space was filled with twisted wreckage, drifting metal, broken cores, and glowing fragments of wraith remains. The Varksha ships that once filled the area were mostly gone. Only a few wounded cruisers still drifted with flickering lights. Arvel felt sorrow for his fallen people, but also something else, relief. A deep, powerful relief he hadn't felt since before the wraiths first attacked their system. "They saved us," whispered an older officer. "Humans saved us." Another officer laughed weakly, still in shock. "They didn't just save us, they erased the enemy as if it was nothing." Arvel nodded slowly. "The wraiths destroyed 23 systems before ours. They consumed suns. And yet humans defeated them in a single day." Silence followed, heavy and emotional. Finally, the comm system beeped. A message from the human flagship, the hologram, activated, revealing Captain Rhea Morgan once again. She looked calm, not proud, not boastful, just steady, like this was routine. For her. Behind her, the Titanus bridge flickered with soft blue lights. Human officers moved with disciplined confidence. "Varksha Fleet, this is Captain Morgan. Your system is clear. The enemy has been fully neutralized." Neutralized. The word felt unreal. The Varksha had believed nothing could neutralize the wraiths. Arvel bowed deeply. "Captain Morgan, humanity has saved us. You have saved our people, our homes, our star. We are forever grateful. But I must ask." He lifted his head, eyes filled with confusion and wonder. "Why help us? Why help strangers you have never met?" Captain Morgan did not hesitate. Her voice softened, carrying weight and truth. "Because we were once alone on a death world. No one helped us. So now we help everyone." Arvel felt his chest tighten. The bridge fell silent. Captain Morgan continued, "Humanity learned to stand alone in a hostile universe. Now that we are strong, we choose to stand for others." The Varksha officers exchanged looks. This was not the answer they expected. Humans were stronger than anyone imagined. Yet their strength came with compassion, loyalty, and honor. Arvel realized they were more than warriors, more than legends, more than Deathworld survivors. Humans were protectors. The Terran Fleet began scanning the system, searching for survivors and lingering threats. A human officer spoke through the comm. "We detect multiple life pods from Varksha vessels, beginning rescue operations." Another officer added, "Terran medical teams are ready. We will treat your injured aboard the Titanus." Arvel was stunned. The humans were not just soldiers, they were caretakers. He turned to his crew, prepared to coordinate with Terran rescue teams, send them everything they need. Maps, codes, survivor signals. The crew sprang into action, energized by hope. Later, Arvel stood at the observation window of his ship, watching Terran drones, rescue pods drifting in the void. Among them floated his people, his soldiers, his friends, survivors who would have died without Terran intervention. He felt his throat tighten. One of his officers joined him. "Commander, humans are not what we believed." Arvel nodded slowly. "No, the old legends said humans were monsters, dangerous, wild, unpredictable." He exhaled softly. "But today, I saw truth. Humans are not monsters." The officer asked quietly, "Then what are they?" Arvel looked out at the Titanus, the massive ship that had saved their world. "They are guardians," he said softly. "Born in fire, forged in struggle, but guided by something rare." The officer leaned closer. "What?" Arvel smiled, a small, sad smile, compassion. Soon, Terran dropships approached the Veil Tor. Human medics in blue armor entered the Varksha corridors carrying advanced equipment. Their movements were efficient, gentle, and calm. One human medic approached a wounded Varksha officer. "Easy," she said kindly. "We'll get you patched up." The alien officer blinked in confusion. You treat us like your own?" The medic smiled beneath her visor. "Pain is universal. Healing should be too." Those words spread through the Varksha crew like warmth. Humans were dangerous, yes, deadly in battle, but they were also healers, helpers, protectors. By the time the system was secure, Varksha survivors gathered in the main hall of their ship. Arvel stood before them, looking across hundreds of tired but alive faces. "My friends," he began softly, "we have witnessed something history will never forget." He pointed to the sky where the Terran fleet shone proudly. "We faced an enemy that devoured worlds. We stood at the edge of extinction, but when all seemed lost," he paused for effect. "The Deathworlders came." A low murmur spread through the crowd. Arvel lifted his voice. "Humans, who we feared, who we doubted, risked their lives for strangers. They destroyed the unstoppable. They saved us." The hall filled with emotion, hope, respect, awe. Arvel concluded, "This story will be told for generations. Our children will learn it. Our histories will record it, and the galaxy will remember." He pointed once more toward the Terran flagship, that when the wraiths came, humanity stood between us and oblivion. The Warzone had finally become quiet. The shattered pieces of wraith ships drifted silently, glowing faint blue as they dissolved into harmless dust. For the first time in many days, the Varksha people felt something they had forgotten. Peace. Commander Arvel stood on the bridge of the Veil Tor, staring at the Terran fleet that hovered calmly above the ruined battlefield. The humans had done the impossible. They hadn't just defeated the wraiths, they had erased them. Every last one, the Titanus, humanity's massive flagship, still glowed with the warmth of its recent battle. Its golden solar spear wings slowly folded back into its armored frame. The ship looked wounded but unbroken, scarred but still proud. A soft chime echoed. "Commander," said the calm officer. "The Terrans are opening a final transmission." "Put it through," Arvel said quietly. Captain Rhea Morgan appeared once again. Calm, steady Poe. Werfel. Behind her, human officers moved efficiently, repairing systems, guiding drones, and tending to the wounded. The Titanus looked like a city preparing to move. Her voice was strong but warm. "Varksha Union, your system is secure. The Wraith threat is gone." Arvel nodded deeply. "Captain Morgan, our people owe you everything. Without the Terran fleet, this world would be gone." Morgan's expression softened. "We did not come for thanks. We came because no species should face extinction alone." Arvel was silent for a moment. Then he asked the question everyone wanted to know. "Will you return? If we ever need you again, will humanity help us?" Captain Morgan didn't hesitate. "If you ever need us, call. The Terran fleet always answers." Those simple words carried weight, more weight than an entire army. Arvel understood something then. Humans were not like other species. They did not seek reward, glory, or control. They sought only to ensure survival, not just for themselves, but for others. Humanity had once struggled alone. Now they refused to let others suffer the same fate. The Terran fleet began shifting formation. Bright lights flickered along the sides of their ships as FTL drives powered up. Beautiful blue rings formed behind the engines, creating ripples in space-time. To the Varksha, it felt like watching gods preparing to leave the mortal world. The comms officer on the Valtor whispered in awe, "Their engines are rewriting gravity." Another officer added, "I have never seen power like this, Commander." Arvel nodded slowly. "Neither have I." Terran destroyers aligned into a triangle pattern. Cruisers formed curves around the Titanus. The dreadnoughts took protective positions on the flanks. Everything the humans did was perfect, synchronized, graceful. Even their departure was a display of power. Across Tavris 9 and the Varksha colonies, survivors gathered outside shelters and damaged buildings. They looked up at the sky, watching the glowing Terran ships like children watching shooting stars. One young Varksha child tugged at her mother's hand. "Mama, will the humans come back if the monsters return?" Her mother knelt beside her and smiled. "Yes," she said softly, "humans come when they are needed." The child looked up again. "They are like heroes." Her mother agreed quietly. "Yes, heroes from a world that never gave up." Inside the council tower, the remaining leaders gathered around a wide hologram showing the Terran fleet. Councillor Vereen spoke first. "We must send them a gift, a sign of honor." Elder Rin shook her head gently. "No gift matches what they gave us. Life." Another councillor asked, "Should we fear them? Their power is beyond anything we've seen." Elder Rin smiled. "No. Only enemies fear humans. We are now under their protection." The council murmured in agreement. Arvel entered the chamber, still stunned by everything he had seen. He spoke quietly, but his words carried strength. Humans are not conquerors. They came when no one else would. They destroyed our greatest enemy. In seconds, he paused. Humans are a force of nature. Back on the battlefield, the Terran Fleet reached full jump readiness. Captain Morgan gave her final command. Terran Fleet, prepare for FTL. Heading Sol system, engage on my mark. A brilliant blue light began spreading across the Titanus's hull. Arvel watched from the Valtor, his eyes filled with respect. Goodbye, Captain Morgan, he whispered. May the stars keep your people safe. Suddenly, 3, 2, 1, engage. Space folded inward, creating a vortex of swirling light. The Terran ships stretched into streaks of blue and white. Then they vanished. A silent flash, a ripple through the stars, an echo left behind in the void. Terran Fleet was gone. The war zone grew still. All that remained was quiet, warm starlight, and the drifting remains of a threat that once terrified the galaxy. Slowly, the Varksha crew began to breathe again. Life returned to the ship. The air felt lighter. Hope felt real. Arvel stood by the window, staring at the empty space where the humans disappeared. His voice shook with emotion. They defeated our greatest enemy. In seconds, one of his officers replied, Commander, what are humans truly? Arvel smiled softly. They are not warriors, he said. Warriors fight. They are not soldiers. He continued. Soldiers defend. He looked at the stars, remembering the power of the solar spear and the unity of the Terran Fleet. Humans, Arvel said firmly, are a force of nature. By the next sunrise, every surviving Varksha outpost, colony, and city knew the story. The message spread faster than light across allied networks, merchant channels, and military communications. Across the galaxy, whispers turned to awe. Awe turned to fear. Fear turned to respect, and a new saying was born: do not fear the enemy. Fear the day humanity joins the fight.